It's such a pleasure to be joining you on this all-new edition of the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya Shrinate and straight on to the big news of the day. And the desperation is clearly showing. Faced with the prospects of an imminent extradition, failed liquor baron Vijay Mallya is desperate to settle dues with banks. A day after he released his 2016 letter, both to the Prime Minister and Finance Minister Jaitley, Mallya today tweeted that he's ready to pay banks now. Mallya says he has already submitted a list of assets to the Karnataka High Court to the tune of 14,000 crore rupees that can be auctioned off to repay debt. According to him, the value of the assets far exceeds his total liabilities and says it is unfair to call him a defaulter anymore. Also, Mallya asserts he has been made the poster boy of defaults despite his many attempts to settle with the lenders. The Mallya offer raises more questions than answers. First, is Mallya feeling the jitters of a possible extradition and prosecution in India? Can banks afford to take his offer at face value? And more importantly, are Mallya files more about political capital rather than plain vanilla loan default cases? That's the big Mallya story, and joining us right here on ET Now is an eminent panel. R Gopalan, former Secretary in the Department of Economic Affairs and Foreign, and of course Finance Secretary as well. Mr. Sanjay Hegde, Senior Counsel at the Supreme Court. I have also got Mr. Rajendra P. Chitale, Managing Partner Chitale and Company. The two political parties being represented by Narendra Taneja of the BJP and Mohammad Khan of the Congress. So thank you each one of you for being with us, and I think it's only fair that I begin with the experts before I move on to the politicians on the show. And Mr. Gopalan, as someone who understands how this entire thing works, you know, how loans are taken, how they become defaults, how offers are made, should they be settled, should they not be settled, what happened in this case. Mr. Vijay Mallya today says that he has been projected as a poster boy of default. The larger question this evening is, and we know where no one to sit on judgment here, but isn't this a dubious distinction of his own making?
It's a dubious distinction for Mr. Mallya, because there are any number of other people who have also taken loan from the banks and have not paid back. So to make this case a high profile case so that you are in a position to put the fear of God into other people who have taken loans, it seems to be a good strategy to work with. But the point also remains that the speed with which the banks are going to recover the remaining loans, either through NCLT process or through any other process, or ARC process or any other process, will also be watched in conjunction with what is happening in the case of Mallya.
That's an important point that you bring about, that this is perhaps being made as an example case and how banks are going to be dealing with a lot of other willful defaulters. But let me take this across to Narendra Taneja before I move any forward in the debate, because it's the BJP government that's trying to nab defaulters. The whole war against NPA has been launched by them, the IBC and all of that. And Mallya continues to say that he is a victim of political prosecution. At least that's what he's suggesting. Mr. Taneja, Vijay Mallya has once again today said that he wants to settle but is being made a scapegoat. Is Mallya justified that perhaps way too much focus was put on making him the poster boy of default and perhaps too little effort really made on actual repayments? Because he claims to suggest that he offered to repay. Like Mr. Gopalan said, it's perhaps a good strategy to make him the poster boy, to put the fear of God, but has little been done to extract repayments, to extract dues out of him, and more focus on making him the poster boy of default?
No, the government is not interested in making anybody a poster boy. The fact is the entire country has been asking the government, media included, why don't you bring him back? Do something. You know, this is the public opinion, is the media, is the country, the people. They have made him whatever, call it the poster boy or whatever. He's the poster boy of Congress misdeeds. That's what he is. The question is, how did he get the loans? We all know that. The entire thing was created with the help, active participation of the Congress party, some of the leaders of the Congress party. We all know that. How he got the money. And of course, when you got money so easily, that's what you do with that money. You don't care. Otherwise, if you look at the way he was managing Kingfisher and other businesses, there's a big difference. Other businesses, he was very prudent, very careful. But with this money, he was very careless. using that money for all kind of things. We all know that. The question is that if he wants to basically politicize the whole issue. Yesterday saying that I have sent the letter to the Prime Minister. Why are you writing to the Prime Minister? Are you a Prime Minister of some country? Are you Finance Minister of some country? You are a fugitive. That's what you are. And the second point is, why did you run away? If you hadn't done anything or you had the money to really pay back, why did you run away? 3 years now. Now, it's only now that you started feeling the heat. You can't go, there's no place to go beyond this planet. And wherever he is in the planet, we'll bring him back. He knows that. Okay. Now that he has realized the government is serious. Right. People of India are serious. They want him back. So he started making this political statement. No, this is all hot air. No meat in all these statements he's making. Now the point I'm trying to make is that the ED, CBI, country's law enforcement agency, they're doing their work. Court is also involved in Karnataka. Let's see what happens. The point is that man like him, either he should come back, still he should come back and face the agency, face the court, face the public opinion, face the people of this country. That's what it is.
So, Mr. Taneja,
why is he waiting for the police of the
Mr. Taneja,
for these agencies to go and bring him here?
Fair
point.
Now
the point is, instead of making statements, he should he should abide by the law and he should do everything in accordance with the law. But we all know the truth.
Right.
He's just trying to politicize the whole issue in order to find a way out.
I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of what you've said, but I think it's only fair that I get Mohammad Khan from the Congress to react to this, because you saying this is all a result of the Congress's misdeeds. He's the poster boy of Congress mismanagement. Mohammad Khan, while I get you to respond to that, the larger point also is, had Mallya not been made this poster boy of default, would it have been business as usual? That's the suspicion, that it would have continued as business as usual. Would we have had the crackdown that we have seen thanks to him being made the poster boy? You can react to the jibe by Mr. Taneja, but also answer this direct question.
Well, first the answer to your question. The reason Mallya is in the position he's in today is because the mismanagement and the flamboyant lifestyle which led to that mismanagement perhaps are the subject matter of several litigations that have been filed against him by various individuals. One of the most heartbreaking petitions is by the families of those people who are owed back wages for several years, who work for Kingfisher Airlines and other allied entities, middle class and lower middle class families who suffered as a result of this man's actions. So as you began the debate by saying this is a problem of his own making, for him to turn around today and say that, oh my God, mujhe sab bura bhala keh rahe hain, my God sir, you dug this pit and now you've fallen in it and now you're surprised कि आप उसमें कैसे पड़े. Number two, Mr. Taneja, please spare me your colleagues and you with your fake outrage and your ramblings about the Congress. Sir, next you say he was born during Congress era when Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister, so blame him for his birth also. What nonsense is this? How far back, how absurd do you have to be to keep saying that everything has to do with the Congress? You've been in power for 4 years. You've been in power for 4 years. Now, during those 4 years, we have seen this man, and this was the most telling thing, and this is why the blame lies at your doorstep. This man had a lookout circular for him. It was suspended for a brief period, which allowed him to escape, and the LOC was restored. The LOC is the subject matter of the union government. It is an exercise of powers by the union government. You have nothing. You have nowhere to hide. And the blame lies squarely at your doorstep. We asked you in Parliament, why was that LOC suddenly suspended only for the brief period? Okay. Till date, you've not been able to provide us an answer. You haven't even made any heads roll for it. So if Mallya has escaped, it is because of you. Just like Nirav Modi, just like Mehul Choksi, there is a pattern here. So please don't turn around and try and put this at the doorstep of the Congress, because you are squarely to blame as well for his running away.
All right. Mohammad Khan and Narendra Taneja, while you are going to exchange barbs and jibes at each other on why this happened in the first place and how one of you assisted in making him flee from this country, I'm going to just take this point to a more substantial ground forward, and I'll come back for the politicians to fight with each other a little later. Sanjay Hegde, coming to you. Have Mallya's attempts, the series of tweets that are coming out, the letters that he's putting out in the public domain, crying foul about how he's being made the poster boy, the scapegoat, there's political posturing at his behest. Has all of this attempt really happened, and has this, attempt to repay surfaced simply because of the final hearing of a London court which will decide on India's request for extradition? Is he under pressure on account of that?
There will be a certain amount of pressure, no doubt, but the extradition proceeding is not an easy proceeding, and you can, and at every stage is subject to appeals. This is these court proceedings are not determinative. After the court, then it goes back to the Home Secretary. The Home Secretary passes an order, again subject to judicial review, and at any stage, any decision taken, it can be appealed further. India has not had a particularly great record on extraditions from the UK. Mallya will have factored all in. But at the end of the day, Mallya is a businessman. Mallya has been in India. Mallya has been, the house of Mallya also had a certain goodwill in Indian business for quite some time. He went into one particular business and that has dragged down everything else with him. The way I've read his tweets, the way I see it is, what he is basically signaling is this: look, your debts are of the nature of about 9,990 crores, just short of 10,000 crores. I have assets worth about 14,000 crores, which I am offering to the before the Karnataka High Court. Let a judge supervise the sale. Let as much money as is possible be recovered out of those 14,000 crores, and everybody can be paid off. But he makes in his tweet series, he makes one important point. He basically says that the CBI and the ED have powers to object to such a sale being done, because after all they are the ones who have seized those assets. Unless the CBI and the ED are on board as far as the sale of assets are concerned, nothing will happen in this case. He knows that as well as a lot of other people. And after all, the Karnataka High Court is also subject to further appeals in the Supreme Court. So essentially what he is telling the government is this: if you are interested in the money, please let the sale go through. Let not any organ of government put in an objection, and thereafter if the sale goes through, at least the banks need not take that big a haircut.
Right.
Because even this figure of 10,000 crores keeps accumulating interest and interest upon interest. So even the banks have often find their hands tied in order to come to a commercial settlement. No,
right.
No public sector bank official dares come to a commercial settlement, because then there is always the question of the Prevention of Corruption Act. Some money was given away. That is why everybody prefers to have things negotiated at the NCLT or through a judicial process.
Right.
So what Mallya's tweets are telling the country is this:
true,
that there are assets,
right.
The assets need to be liquidated, but if one government department comes in the way, then nothing can go happen. Go further.
Yes, Mr. Hegde, that's an important point that you're raising, and that's a point of discussion that I was going to touch upon next. But before I move across to Mr. Chitale, and Mr. Chitale, there are these figures that do the rounds. He claims that only 5,500 crore rupees were lent. 9,000 crore rupees is what the banks are saying. He also asserts recoveries to the tune of 1,800 crore rupees have already been made, and that money is lying with the Karnataka High Court. He goes on to say that he has made two offers, one in March and one in April 2016, to pay 4,000 crore rupees, which was then revised to 4,400 crore rupees, which of course includes and excludes 2,000 crore rupee suit that was being claimed for. According to him, he wrote letters to the CBI once in May and twice in June 2016. My larger question to you, Mr. Chitale, is that why wasn't his offer to settle done impromptu? Why was it not done promptly? Was it because it was not in good faith, or were perhaps the banks wary because of the point that Sanjay Hegde is making, because of public perception? There was lack of legal ring-fencing that the IBC has not now brought, which has changed things. And no banker would have wanted to take a discretionary call on a haircut and then be hauled up in a court of law 10 years after he's retired from service. So do you blame the banks for not settling with him, even though he actually offered to pay a large chunk of what he owed the banks? Mr. Chitale.
Yeah, if I recall right, there are two aspects of this. One, can you hear me?
Yes, sure. Go ahead, sir.
Hello?
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Yeah, so if I recall right, at that point of time, there was no specific number. I think whatever was on the table was again subject to a contractual understanding of what the final settlement amount is. And at that stage, it would have been very difficult for the banking industry to come to any bilateral understanding, given all the issues that you yourself highlighted. So there was no question at that point of time, absent any supervision framework that we have under the IBC, for the banks to come to an understanding of the nature which one would have possibly contemplated under the IBC framework. And in that scenario, if the amount itself was to be mutually agreed, it would have been extremely difficult for the banks to actually come to this conclusion. So clearly banks were not in a position at that point of time, given all the risks that you yourself highlighted, to actually come to an understanding with Mallya with regard to the settlement.
A quick follow up on that, and Mr. Gopalan, I'd like to hear your views on this. Do you believe the banks were, their hands were tied because nobody wanted to take this tough call, you know, that there was no ring fencing, they weren't protected by the statute, and which is why a call wasn't taken? And if you actually look at the larger picture of how things are evolving now, I mean, despite the IBC, which is a good thing, it's going to clean up the economy, it's perhaps going to take care of bad debt, but the IBC has settled cases taking a 70–80% haircut. I mean, Alok Industries is just one example I can quote. But Mallya was willing to pay a large chunk, almost 80% of what he owed banks, of all the money that was outstanding against him. Who erred in rejecting the offer? And eventually, who's going to pay a price for this? Tomorrow, I mean, today, if this goes in IBC and if there's a settlement that happens, I'm sure there'll be much lesser money that will be recovered. So who's going to take the blame? Who's going to take the blame for lesser money being recovered from Mallya? He could have paid a lot more then.
Very good question. The way the bankers are subjected to a number of things. Today, the last few days you have seen. We have also seen the triple C's, CAG, CVC and CBI, which had hampered the decision making capacity of bankers to take a call on when to close a case, being afraid that if they close the case at some point in time, determine this is the balance to be taken, probably there may be a question later. So as somebody mentioned, it's better to go through a legal process which indicates what is the final amount on that, and then take that money and then get going and nobody gets hurt. Now, that process in our country takes a long time, either through SARFAESI or DRT, or you go through the IBC process. Now, it takes some time. Now, unless you go through this kind of a process, I don't think the bankers will feel safe enough to arrive at a particular number, freeze onto it and collect that money and get going. Now, the question then arises is that the number of cases haircut is huge. I mean, 80%, 90% haircut is being taken in a number of cases. In Mallya's case, it's far less. If what he offers ultimately turns out to be the number that is realizable by selling those assets in the market, then what he offers is extremely reasonable. But unfortunately, events have moved on, and I think it is difficult for anybody to put the clock back. And therefore, we have a case where he is willing to pay the full amount now, maybe after getting forced through various, Fugitive Economic Offenders bill and many other things. He might be now tempted to or would like to settle and pay the money, but unless they go through a process of the court, it will not be accepted, and it's going to be a tough call to make whether to allow these proceedings to kind of go through and not be in a position to realize the money, because once this happens, obviously the interest in the assets, people will start bidding much lower on those assets and the money realizable will be very, very low. So, do we go through this process whole hog and get reduced amount, or you now get the amount, get the assets sold, and then keep the cases pending, and once the assets are sold and money is realized, then take a call as to the kind of haircut and what further action is to be taken. But in Mallya's case, I think there is another angle to it. The ED angle is there, PMLA angle is there. Now, that will certainly be a case in a court, and that will go on. So, regardless of his settlement of the money he is going to do, which if he offers and if it is accepted, the PMLA case will still be there.
Absolutely. I think that's the big differentiation. The charges against Mallya are not just debt default, but also money siphoning. And I don't think those can be ignored just yet. But I will take a quick question to Naren Taneja before I move on. Mr. Taneja, you know, when Vijay Mallya puts out a tweet and when he wants the world to know how events flowed, he not just says that he wrote to the SBI and the banking consortium twice and all of that. He also shot off letters to the Prime Minister and Finance Minister. And you are right in saying that, you know, he is no head of the state. Why should he be writing to the Prime Minister? But he was also a Rajya Sabha member when he did go out of the country. My question to you really is that why were you know, requests or offers to pay not paid heed to? And I'm going to ask you a bit of a, you know, cheeky, a bit of a candid question there. Were political gains out of prosecuting Mallya a lot more than perhaps the funds that had to be recovered from him?
Well, let me take you back in 2016. The point is Vijay Mallya a great politician? Is he a leader of some important political party? The answer to all this is no. Yes, he was a member of Rajya Sabha. Fine, we all know that also, that how he became a member of Rajya Sabha, and he only misused that authority, nothing else. And if you're writing a letter to the Prime Minister, those are your business matters, you know, and banks and other agencies involved. Why are you writing a letter to the Prime Minister? And after 3 years, you know, you're coming out that I sent a letter to the Prime Minister. You know, the point is that, you know, if you look at very carefully, what exactly happened was this, that he got all this money very, very easily. And in those days, probably he was used to having direct access to the Prime Minister. That's probably how he got all those loans. He definitely had access to several important members of the UPA too. That's for sure. And senior bureaucrats. We all know how he got that money. Now the thing is that, you know, he thought probably the same thing, that he had easy access to the Prime Minister or Congress. He would write a letter to the Prime Minister and probably try to get the issue settled and all. But that's not how it works. That's not how we function. The point is that we have got agencies, we have got other thing, and, you know, the law is going to take its own course. And it's important, it's very important to remember, is the poor people's money in the banks that he misused. And the Congress let that money go into his pocket. They allowed it. And secondly, let's not also forget one thing. You see that thousands of employees who were left without any future, without any hope. So we have got to understand, and Mohammad Khan ji, please listen to me, let me finish. You see, and I really feel sad, a person like Mohammad Khan, I have a very high respect for him. That today he's speaking as a spokesperson of Vijay Mallya. Why are you spokesperson of Vijay Mallya?
No.
Why do you want to defend a man like him?
Mr. Taneja.
I'm really surprised.
Mr.
Mohammad
Taneja.
Khan being spokesperson of Vijay Mallya. Very sad, very unfortunate.
Okay. So I'll get Mohammad Khan to react to that. But, you know, the larger point that you're making, Mohammad, I'm coming to you in a minute. But the larger point that you're making, Mr. Taneja, that this is poor people's money that he was misusing, then the banks and the government, which was apprised of his intention to repay, should have moved on that. Because, you know, guess what? You did not take money back from Vijay Mallya. You had to recapitalize public sector banks. There was taxpayers' money being put in. I mean, the government can't walk away from its fiduciary responsibilities like that.
No.
But I'll get, one second, sir. No, sir. You said that this was poor people's money.
One second. Let me reply. Your question, let me reply.
Go ahead, very
just
quickly.
1 second only. You see, the point is what the important question is that if we really wanted to pay back, you know, public memory is short. You're forgetting the details. Why did he run away? Why? I mean, Congress party has been telling us every hour, last 3 years, that you allowed him to run away.
Right.
Why did he run away? If he was really sincere, he should have stayed put in Delhi or Bombay or wherever in Bangalore in the country and face the agencies, face banks,
have a point there.
organize the sale of his assets and paid back. So we know his intention. Congress party knows his intention. We know his intention. The country knows his intention. He's a child of the Congress party and the Congress party's culture.
Mr. Taneja, you are preaching the converted here. I'm with you that he should have faced here, he should have stayed here, he should have faced the law of the land, made his repayments. Fleeing the country is not an option. But I will still go across to Mohammad Khan because you keep blaming the Congress party for this. The reality is that Mr. Mallya fled this country in your regime and you cannot deny that. And so did Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi. But I'll anyways get Mohammad Khan. I think he wants to make a point there, to quickly make a point before I move on with the other potent arguments. Mohammad?
Very quickly.
Yes. Very
quickly. I understand the attempts of the BJP and its spokespersons to try and conflate anybody who attacks them as the enemy, because for them dissent is disloyalty. They're not used to hearing any criticism, and anyone who is anything other than a loyal bhakt is of course an enemy. Sir, we are standing and asking you hard questions because we're the opposition. During the Congress's regime, Many entities took loans from banks, including Jet Airways, Indigo, SpiceJet. They're not defaulters, they're profit-making entities today. Mallya was a problem. The cause of action arose during your time when you came to government with great powers of reform and great promises of reform. And you let him, Nirav Modi, Mehul Choksi, all escape. Once can be a coincidence, twice can be an accident, third time it clearly points to a pattern. And you can stand here and pontificate and yell on these debates all you want, but the nation sees the kind of
all children of the Congress party, all these names
I also want to point out one thing, Supriya.
Of your party.
No, sir, I didn't interrupt you. Now you listen to me.
Children of your party.
I want to point out.
Okay, let's keep the civil, gentlemen. Let's
do you know
keep
why
the
he's
civil,
written you
please.
this letter? Sir, listen to me. Do you know why he's written you this letter? He's going to use this as an example in the court proceedings. He's going to say that, look, this is what I'm trying to make common cause with the government of India. He will highlight all these debates, show people like you speaking, and he'll say, look, this is how the government of India is responding. Sir, you have to be clever and anticipate all of these things. You have to step up your defense in the court there if you want to extradite him. Do you know Congress extradited over 40 people? The list is available on the Ministry of External Affairs website. You are unable to extradite just one man. What kind of a spineless government are you?
Mohammed Khan, you've given a strong defense of the points that were made by Narendra Taneja, just as he made potent arguments, but I have to talk numbers. And Mr. Gopalan, I will throw some numbers for the benefit of our viewers here, numbers that were also spoken by Sanjay Hegde. Mallya has pointed out in his tweets and his letter how UB Holdings and he have filed an application before the Karnataka High Court even as late as the 22nd of this month, which is a few days back, listing out available assets to the tune of 14,000 crore rupees, for which he is seeking court's permission to sell assets under judicial supervision and repay debtors. Now, will you agree with Mallya that such conduct doesn't amount to willful default like he's saying? And shouldn't banks and courts at this stage, I know the clock can't be turned back and all of that, but at this stage when he's listed out assets that can be sold and repayments can be made, shouldn't banks and courts lap up this opportunity to get what's due, irrespective of where Mallya resides and what he does? Because shouldn't that be priority, to extract as much out of him as possible at this stage? Mr. Gopalan. Mr. Gopalan, could you hear me? Okay, I'll go across to Sanjay Hegde. And Sanjay, I know you made this point on the show right here that, 14,000 crore worth of assets have been outlined. He sought permission to sell it under judicial supervision. What should the priority of the government be? I mean, optics perhaps it is not going to serve any purpose here. What should the priority of banks, what should the priority of the lenders, of the government in this particular case at this stage be? Can they sit across the table, negotiate, or can they actually let him go, sell those assets and repay? Because you need that money back.
That's exactly what what Mallya is asking. If you want those assets sold, then the CBI and the ED should not raise objections. That's the basic tenor of the tweets. Can a government tell its investigating agencies, now back off, let the commercial side of things be sorted out, they hold your horses on criminality for a while? And would the agencies take that advice from the government? That's the question. But Mallya is basically highlighting that you cannot proceed on both horses simultaneously and expect a resolution. If you have to have a resolution, it has to be a commercial resolution. Thereafter, maybe you decide whether you want to go after him on criminality or not. But if you ride criminality as well as commerce simultaneously, then all that you are asking for is for lots of lawyers to spend lots of time on these cases. The lawyers will benefit. I don't see anybody else benefiting.
That's a valid argument indeed, that there has to be two ways to approach this. Should you ask your investigative agencies to go full blow, or should this be a commercial resolution of the matter? Mr. Gopalan, you've been in the hot seat as a top bureaucrat in this country. How easy or difficult is it going to be for the government to make up its mind on, should this be commercial resolution? Should they allow Mallya to sell assets and repay banks, or should the agencies go ahead and prosecute him? Because Mallya in his tweet also says that if CBI and ED oppose his plans to sell assets and pay back in the Karnataka High Court, then questions should be raised on their real motive. Is that a valid point that he's making? Mr. Gopalan?
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. There was a interruption.
Not an issue.
Well, this is a very, very good question, a very complicated question at that. I think if we think that most importantly we should get the assets back and we have to sell the assets and get the money back, then there is a procedure to be followed. Now, question of willful default, Mr. Mallya has been a willful defaulter as per the definition of what banks look at. So, that is no escape from that. But then yes, decision has to be taken to see whether we can go through this court process and try and get the assets sold and then money realized, and I am sure it is possible to realize much more amount than the haircuts which the banks have taken in the IBC process. It is possible, but that requires some amount of courage, that requires some amount of understanding among everyone that we are going to realize the money in the interest of the banks and we are not going to play politics. Now, are we in that mood or are we in that environment at this point in time is the question.
Yeah, and that's the more complicated question, is it not? That are we in that environment at all? One of the other points that Mallya raises, and Mr. Chitania, I will get you to speak on this before I take a quick breather here on the show. ED has attached assets as proceeds of crime to the tune of 13,900 crore rupees. Mallya insists in public statements that he is now making, in tweets that he is putting out, in letters that he is now putting out, that no one can fault that. I mean, I believe no one can fault that, but he says ED has attached assets acquired in 1902, it has attached assets that were inherited and those were acquired before the Kingfisher airline was formed. Now, if that is the case, is this simply negligence or is this a little bit of an overreach on the part of the investigative agency?
Well, I think now if we are talking about invoking the Fugitive Economic Offenders law, in that case, obviously the law enables, subject to whatever challenges happen to the law itself, to have access to all the properties of the offender once the person is declared by the court as a fugitive economic offender. And I would think that now the whole approach of what Mr. Mallya is trying to do is a bit too little too late. And secondly, it is perhaps also an attempt to avoid a double jeopardy, because if indeed the process of the law takes over in terms of declaring him as a fugitive economic offender, in that case there would have to be a challenge mounted on his side to come out of that itself. And if indeed pending that challenge all the properties are confiscated, you actually have a double jeopardy scenario that pursuant to this law, all the properties of his stand confiscated and the debt will still stand on his head in terms of personal guarantee. So, I suppose at some level this is a trade-off that he is now trying to do in terms of trying to put forth a framework of saying that these are the assets which are there. We still do not know what would really be the realizable value of those assets today. Those numbers that are being talked about may have been numbers at one point of time. There is absolutely no clue at all of what they are really worth today. If at all the past auctions which were attempted by the banks with respect to the properties that were pledged to them is any clue, for all you know, it might not be surprising to see that the actual realization is a fraction of the values which are being indicated today.
Okay.
So, I suppose that this is a kind of an attempt also to avoid a double jeopardy in his part.
Oh, absolutely, and there is a double jeopardy, and I'm going to come back and discuss all of that and a lot more. I'll have to take a really quick breather here on the show. I'm back in just a minute. Please stay right here with us on the India Development Debate. It's so good to be back with you once again on the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. And let me quickly take this across back to the politicians on the show. And Narendra Taneja, if I may start with you. Vijay Mallya blames what he chooses to call quote-unquote politically motivated extraneous factors that are interfering with his settlement efforts. He believes he is a victim of political posturing on this one. How are you going to respond to that allegation being made, besides just saying that this is the Congress's misdeeds?
The question is, why was not making such statement 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago? Why now? The point is that, you know, he started now, he can feel the heat. He knows the government is serious. You see, we have got now this Fugitive Economic Offender law in place. He knows what this law means. He must have consulted lawyers. He has been told what exactly the law means. And now he started feeling this tremendous heat. You know, so that's what basically is responding to. He just wants to say, all right, he's a political victim. The government wants to do it for political reasons and all that. He's not a politician. He's a businessman. He was lucky he got the all support and everything thanks to the Congress party. But the point here is that here his story is what he's just now trying basically to appeal and all that and, you know, attract some kind of sympathy and try to make all right kind of noises. But look, we as a government, we have to look at the history. We'll have to look at the man's behavior, his conduct the last 3-4 years and how he got the money, what he did with that money, and the money should also go back. And also, if you see his tweets, see his statements and interviews the last 3 years, he was quite convinced the government wouldn't be able to do anything. He was quite convinced. It's only now he started feeling the heat and he's convinced that, oh, this government is really after me and would bring me back to India. So it's only now he started saying all this. Why didn't he say all this 3 years ago, 2 years ago? He had all the time, the time.
Okay.
He didn't react. He didn't do anything.
Right.
So now the question is that, you know,
can I
the question is that now, finally, what happened? Oh, this is nothing new.
Right.
This is nothing. You basically say, oh, it's political and all the politicians do it all the time. Congress does it all the time. Now you see the Congress spokesman defending him, working as his spokesperson. So that's what it is. We are prepared for it. We will bring him back and he will have to return every single penny of the poor depositors.
Absolutely. I like that muscular approach to this, that we will bring him back no matter where he is on the planet and he will have to repay every buck. The reality is he's willing to repay. Let him do that. I mean, you know, that's the irony of it all. But anyways, I will go across to Mohammad Khan. And Mohammad Khan, you know, you keep blaming...
He's not willing to repay.
Let me just come to you, Mohammad Khan. You keep blaming the BJP for letting Vijay Mallya flee the shores of India. The reality also is that it is this government, and you know, I find a lot of holes that I can punch in Mr. Taneja's arguments, but on this I am with him, that it is this government that has got the Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill. They are trying to nab him, they are trying to do extradition. You can't blame them for not making enough attempt to get Vijay Mallya back, can you?
Well, I was listening to Mr. Taneja intently, and I know Mr. Taneja personally, and I know he is too smart to believe the superficial arguments that he is making. I will make 4 quick points. First, let me start with this Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill, which all the spokespersons of the BJP seem to have educated themselves on courtesy the Modi app and now come and spout that nonsense. I'll tell you why it's incorrect. A, the bill is prospective. B, it attaches the properties of people without the necessity of a trial. His properties are already attached before this bill came into force. So please don't try and turn a virtue into a necessity into a virtue. Number 2, sir, I don't understand why you people, your arguments resolve themselves into 2 points. First is कांग्रेस की गलती थी एंड दूसरा मोदी जी को से तो डर गया है ये तो इसलिए अब ये वापस आने की कोशिश कर रहा है सर आई वांट टू प्रेजेंट समथिंग टू यू एंड डोंट लेट योर क्रिपलिंग इंफीरियरिटी कॉम्प्लेक्स vis-a-vis the Congress party overshadow this sir this man is doing something very clever the last 3 months he has been making a case before this magistrate in London that he will not get a fair trial in India now he is supposed to submit additional evidence he has moved this letter I don't know if he has any intention of paying this money or not. But I can tell you one thing for certain, Mr. Taneja. He will play the conference by Mr. M.J. Akbar. He will play debates like this in the news articles that have appeared in the last 24 hours to demonstrate that he cannot get a fair trial in India and that's why your extradition proceedings must be defeated. You are playing into his hands with this jingoistic rhetoric about Modi ji se dar gaya and you are making, I don't know why you don't understand. Extradition is a process. The Congress has done it 40 times. Go to the Ministry of External Affairs website. They have a helpful list. I know it would require some additional reading, which the BJP is averse to doing, but you will learn that we have extradited economic offenders in the past. Follow that template. Do it judiciously instead of coming on debates and talking about your inferiority complex vis-a-vis the Congress.
Mohammad Khan, I'm not going to let political mudslinging hijack my debate. I will not allow that to happen. I usually
stop defending him. Don't be the spokesman, Mr. Khan.
I will not let BJP and Congress trade charges at each other.
Sir, I am advising you how to catch him.
Really sad, really unfortunate.
Very bad. I must say that both of you should stop this political mudslinging. At stake is taxpayers' money. At stake is money that Mr. Mallya owes to banks. At stake is the future of some of these lenders. Let's get our heads together and get that money back, and if need be, get Mr. Mallya back. That's what I'm trying to tell both of you. Let's not have political mudslinging on the show. But in any case, I'll go across to Sanjay Hegde on this. And Sanjay Hegde, the point that was made before we took that break was double jeopardy. It has also been said that charges against Mallya are not just about debt default. It just can't be one simple corporate commercial resolution that can happen, because charges of fund siphoning have also been made, which is a criminal offense. Though Mallya denies those allegations, there's no, I'm not disputing that. Is there a scope for any sort of settlement in a case of fund siphoning? Can the government and Mr. Mallya sit across the table and talk when he's being charged with a very, very grave charge of fund siphoning as well, which is why the ED case, which is why the PMLA?
Look, there is nothing that the government cannot do if it is so minded to. There have been several cases, not of a commercial nature. Did you not settle with people whenever you had an Assam Accord or a Nagaland Accord or anything? Conducting prosecutions and withdrawal from prosecution is also a prerogative of the government. The point, however, is that government operates through various agencies. Each of those agencies has a vision of its own. Unless there is leadership and direction given from the government side, they do not look at what other arms of the government are doing. So, unless there is somebody high up in the government who can take the political call, saying, let's go for the money, let's make the man cough up the money. Or he takes a political call saying that, no, if we settle anything, optics looks bad, let's go for the man irrespective of what happens. That call has to be taken and the direction has to be conveyed to everyone, and everybody has to then thereafter be on the same page. But with things being as they are, it's only the finance ministry that can take a call, but then that has its own personal problems. Or it has to be at the level of the Prime Minister, but I do not think, and that is why Mallya seems to have actually pitched his letter directly to the Prime Minister. But whether such a decision will be taken, or even if not formally notified, if there is an informal directive, things can be worked out. But I do not see this government thinking 3 steps ahead. Yeah. They seem to have be the kind of people who just put their head down and charge, like the bull theorem. Okay. If they manage to get somebody that way, good luck to them. But I don't see smart thinking here.
All right, Sanjay Hegde, you make a point about this will need political will. This is going to need political direction either which way. The one choice will have to be, let's cough up the money at any cost. The other choice can be, forget about the money, let's nab the man, it's good optics. Mr. Gopalan, because this is eventually going to be a political call, because this is eventually going to display the government's political will, how tough or easy will it be for the government to tell its prosecuting agencies to back off so that banks can take over and get their money back? And, or how easy and tough is it going to be for the government to tell the banks, you know what, this whole IBC, NPA crackdown, back off, we are going to go for the hauler, and in this case, it's going to be Mr. Mallya himself.
Very tough call. I don't expect, when things have come to this pass at this level, I don't think anybody will be in a position to take a decision on the manner in which Mr. Sanjay Hegde says has to be taken, however practical that can be. So I personally believe that, let us look at Mr. Mallya's viewpoint also. Now the other, PMLA case is still there. Now nobody can, that's a government seems to be having a strong case on that. And if government were to withdraw that case also, it will look as if they are abetting or aiding a criminal. So that will be a tough thing to really kind of take. So, but even tougher will be the other things which Mr. Sanjay Hegde mentioned. That will really be a tough call. I don't expect at this point in time, when we are almost 1 year to the general elections, when perception also matters quite a lot, I don't think, whatever may be the merits of the case, if the objective is to recover the money for the bank, that is one objective, or if the objective is to punish the man for having done so many wrong things, that is another objective, regardless of whether the banks get the money or not, punish the person, that is another objective. But this is, both these things are, the second one is more easy to take because of the perception issues it can, I mean advantages it can create, and the first one will be very, very difficult to take, and I'm something in me tells me that that's not going to happen.
I think something in me also tells me that's not going to happen. The optics are way too wrong for that to happen almost less than a year before general elections. But Mr. Chitole, I'll let you have a word on this. Pay your outstanding and live happily hereafter. That's the broad message that banks and governments usually tell borrowers. Can Mallya's case be such an open and shut case? Do you think that's possible at all?
Sorry, can you just repeat that question?
I am saying, you know, pay your outstanding and live happily ever after is the general basic rule that governments and lenders tell borrowers. That's how you and I borrow money, right? We borrow money, we pay the banks our regular EMIs, we live in peace, we live happily ever after. Can Mallya's case though, even though if he is ready to pay, even though he may cough up the money, can that be an open and shut case? Or has too much water passed under the bridge for that to happen?
It's too late for that. Absolutely, I think it's too late in the day to talk about that. I think the die is already cast. You know, in fact, it would not be wrong to say that it is because of the entire atmospherics which was created based on what happened in Mallya's case and in other few cases, that it was actually possible for even the IBC to actually happen and to become a politically acceptable reality. And therefore, a lot has systemically happened based on the framework that we really need a setup which should enable banks to do better in terms of resolving their assets. So I think as far as Mallya's case is concerned, it is far too late in the day to try and come with the old wine in new bottle and to look at it only as a financial settlement matter. We have too much water under the bridge for that to be reversed.
Indeed, there's too much water under the bridge for the government
and
to
sit
sit
across. At the end of the day, I think systemically it has been a positive that we have actually, ended up having a robust resolution law. Though clearly there are teething troubles with the IBC, I think it's a great directionally positive step which has happened. And but for some of these events which have happened, we do not know whether the IBC would have really seen the light of the day so soon.
True. And which is perhaps why we started off this debate, was saying that have the optics around it really paid well for Vijay Mallya, but paid well for the IBC process. But Mohammad Khan, you know, I've just got the last 4-5 minutes on my show and I have to ask you this question.
Yes,
Here, you know, I have nothing against Vijay Mallya, I have nothing against the banks, yes. I have nothing against anybody except for the fact that I think money should come back to India. And Vijay Mallya, if he has sinned, should pay a price for this. But here is a man, but I also blame, you know, lenders for not being able to take the calls. Here is a man who has fled the country, mocked the legal system, and is also accused of criminalities in the IDBI case, I think. After all of this, can the government sit across the table and negotiate with Vijay Mallya? Forget the optics, forget the moral hazards and all of that. But look at the kind of things that I said. I mean, Mr. Mallya was a Rajya Sabha member. He was a parliamentarian. He decided to flee the country for fear of prosecution. He should have stayed back, faced the music, repaid banks, you know, got his share of the ordeal. Can the government afford to sit back and negotiate with this man?
Well,
would you have done so if you were in office?
The short answer is no. The short answer is no. Because we must remember that many of the complainants in the vast majority of cases are private parties, are independent banks, are other lenders, are people who work for him. The government can't, under the parents patriot doctrine, assume charge of all of these cases and say, oh, you know what, I forgive you, give me the money along with interest. You can't do that. That's not how our system works. I don't think at this, I think that stage is too far gone. I think Vijay Mallya had multiple opportunities to pay these banks back. He chose to flee. Now, here is something I must point out, and this is a systemic failing, and there is a lesson in the government for this which they refuse to learn. After Mallya left, You notified the first draft of the Fugitive Offenders Bill in the public domain a year before Nirav Modi fled. But you never took action on it. You were focused on the Triple Taraq Bill, very important bill, but you could have introduced this simultaneously. You didn't. When Nirav Modi left the country and somehow he had knowledge of his imminent arrest 20 days before, so his entire family leaves as part of a large move, this bill suddenly becomes the central focus. My point is, too little, too late. Not only have you created an atmosphere in which you are unable to prevent frauds, you have actively facilitated the departure of these people. At the very least, hold the people because of whom these people left accountable. You can talk about the Congress all you like for one more year, because that is how long you will be in power if that's what you do. I only have that to say to you.
Naren Taneja, do you think, and I'm really going to ask you the uncomfortable question from the party's point of view, do you think this new offer to reach a settlement with banks, this whole new plea in the public domain, is not just a reflection of the pressure on Vijay Mallya, but who's perhaps running out of time? There is no denying that, because his whole extradition proceeding is in court. But it is perhaps also pressure on the government, because the government of the day has to show some results in this high-profile case before 2019 elections. You chose to make Vijay Mallya the poster boy of default. Vijay Mallya was everything that was wrong with the Indian industry and was wrong with how Indian industry treated debt recklessly. And today there are going to be no results to show before general elections 2019. So there's perhaps pressure on both sides to yield result.
What pressure? It's our commitment to the people. In 2014, we made a commitment to the people. Congress was all about corruption, and we will be all about no corruption, zero tolerance for that. And you have seen that, and people know that. So it's basically our fight against, corruption.
We've seen
and we want to make India, corruption free. That's our commitment. That's our agenda. So you have to see this case as a part of the same thing. Vijay Mallya, we all know the history. The important point you were forgetting very conveniently. He was just not an ordinary borrower. He got that money almost, for free, for nothing, without efforts. You and me, when we go to bank, even if you borrow 5,000 rupees, amount of paperwork we have to do. Here, just some politician, access to the Prime Minister office, some Congress politician, and phone calls, and that's it. That's it. You get thousands and thousands of crores. So you also have to remember that story.
Politician who helped him escape the country,
to the people of this country also. Now the point here is that it is unlike Congress, it's not our culture to support or to protect fugitive. We don't protect fugitives in this country, in our party. We totally
just let them
and where
escape
is the
after they take
question
pictures
of
with the
any
Prime
scope
Minister?
for any political intervention? There are organizations, there are government agencies, professional agencies, banks. They are doing their job. They will do their work.
Indeed.
Vijay Mallya may be a VVIP for Congress party, not for us. He is a fugitive for us. He is a fugitive for the people of this country.
Okay.
And the law has to take its own course. Congress can keep criticizing us, call press conference. We are not hassled by that.
Okay.
Our commitment is to go for a corruption-free India. We are committed to it.
Okay. The optics of this case really tell you that story, don't they? But completely out of time on this edition of the India Development Debate. Thank you very, very much, gentlemen, for being with us. Naren Taneja, Mohammad Khan, Sanjay Hegde, Mr. R Gopalan and Mr. Chitale. Thanks very much for sparing time and being with us on this very important discussion. Vijay Mallya is putting out public pleas. He's putting out his letters that he wrote to the Prime Minister and Finance Minister 2 years back on his intention to repay. The big question is he doing it under pressure because there are extradition proceedings against him? Or is this a cleverly crafted out strategy to make his case even stronger in the London court? That's the big question. And back home, the two choices that the government will perhaps have to make and will be tough to make is, do they recover the money? Do they get Vijay Mallya to cough up every penny that he owes to India's banks? Or do they go for the juggler and tell the banks, take a walk, we are going to go and nab Vijay Mallya? Because the criminality of fund siphoning and the PMLA cases are also issues that Mr. Mallya will have to answer on. That said, the IBC has taken huge haircuts in big cases. Mr. Mallya was prepared to repay a large part of his debt. Why did the banks not act then? Why were they waiting for legal ring fencing by the IBC? Because people in commercial banks need to take commercially viable decisions. On that note, completely out of time on this edition of the India Development Debate, thank you very, very much for being with us.